Hey everybody, welcome back to the Convo Couch. So I really wanted to also point out this this situation that a lot of people didn't know about that happened here in California with the California director. And this is a person that I'm not like myself like necessarily friends with, but I am acquainted. Their name is Susie Shannon. And Susie has been somebody that has fought for housing, against homelessness. She's pretty well known in the activist community. She's also now a member of the DNC, which was a great feat for a lot of progressives. She's also a member of the California Democratic Party. So she's pretty well known in our state. The former political director of California, Susie Shannon, said that the campaign that championed workers' rights ignored her complaints of harassment and discrimination. She basically was demoted and essentially pushed out after she had cancer surgery, and like literally the day after, right? And obviously if it was anybody, right, it would suck. Like anybody that like this happens to, like if you're pregnant, if you have cancer, whatever, like anytime this happens, it's not okay, because in the majority of the time when it happens in the US, these people are like literally pushed out with nothing. Like you don't get your health care, you don't get any pension, you don't get anything, unlike in other countries. So it's bad. But the fact that it was the Bernie Sanders campaign that had its name and did this is even worse, because this is the campaign about inclusivity and diversity and tolerance and acceptance, and we're the bastion of progressivism. And then this happens. Now, this isn't a whole Bernie, let's blame Bernie, but obviously he has accountability to, like, he has to take accountability to a degree because he was in charge. And unfortunately, if you are a leader in charge and shit like this happens, you are going to get some backlash. But I more so want to focus right now on these people, because more people need to know who they are so we don't repeat the same mistakes. And that is my thing. I could sit here all day and talk about how Bernie did this and how Bernie let us down and how Bernie blah, blah, blah. But here we are again in a system that makes somebody like Bernie Sanders, who has been, at the very least that he put all these things on the map, is pretty much demolished by from internally, from people within his own campaign. And this was a lawsuit filed Friday in the LA Superior Court, and Susie Shannon said it was the Sanders campaign's, quote, outrageous and compassionless conduct that resulted in her forced resignation. And this was solely based because she had a misfortune of being diagnosed with ovarian cancer that required major surgery to treat the disease. And the campaign reportedly then tried to get her to sign a non-disclosure agreement for money. The campaign also offered her 2 months of health insurance if she signed. And Susie Shannon refused. Here's again, instead of just giving her the health insurance, they wanted to cover their asses, right? And make sure that she signed it. Of course, she refused, which was the right thing to do. I applaud her for doing that and having the courage to speak out and do all of this right now. And the lawyer also further said, it's so disappointing that a political campaign that purported to stand for so much, including access to healthcare and workers' rights, would behave this way. Exactly. Now, you're turning Bernie Sanders' campaign after the fact, obviously, and smearing Bernie Sanders' name now, because now people aren't necessarily going to buy, oh, this is what Bernie stood for. Then why the hell does he have these people pushing this rhetoric and treating their employees this way? Susie Shannon is one of many people that were mistreated during the Bernie Sanders campaign. We interviewed Melissa Michelson. Other people have interviewed other staffers, and they have been pretty frank and honest about what happened. You could look at what Matt Orfalea experienced and the way he was treated. Sure, his video might have been controversial and wrong, but to treat him this way and the back and forth and all the stuff that went out, and yet having people like this man that I'm going to mention in a minute, Rafa Navar, who was behind all of this, him and Chuck Rocha both. And I mention their names because it is important who to identify with this corruption. The campaign official accused of demoting her, of course, Rafa Navar, called the allegation completely false and said Shannon's position never changed. The suit says Navar brought on a second political director and assigned her Shannon's work. So they automatically replaced her, and he's denying this. But this happened because I remember being, really deep into like, what the hell is going on? Why are these people not doing their jobs? Why is this so bad? And then I found out that she had, no, she was no longer going to be involved in the Sanders campaign. That's his name, Rafa Navar. So he was the guy that pretty much was above her and was able to say, okay, that's it, you're done. And behind him, of course, we have Chuck Rocha. And by the way, Susie Shannon had approximately 15 inches of tumors from the ovaries that extended into her abdominal area and that were removed in the October 7th operation. The day after surgery, she says, she got a phone call in her hospital room from Rafa Navar, the campaign's state director, telling her that she was being demoted. Navar bluntly stated that he had no confidence in her ability to do her job, given her cancer and surgery, and that he was bringing in someone else to do her job, the suit says. So again, Rafa Navar was the California state director. Susie Shannon was the California political director, and she was pushed out by the higher up, and he consulted with others in order to make this happen. She said she was devastated and reached out to the campaign advisor, Chuck Rocha, and here we go. Navar and Rocha were kind of in agreement, right? She reported Navar to Human Resources, which is a story you guys can look back in our reporting on the Sanders campaign. Many people reported it to Human Resources instead. They either got fired, got demoted, or received backlash, even volunteers who went through this whole process. They told Susie Shannon that they would address her complaints, but they never did, which is, again, is a familiar tale. And Navar reportedly also, quote, continuously scolded and undermined, criticized and ostracized Shannon, despite her continuing to perform her duties fully and successfully, this suit says. So Chuck Rocha, nonchalantly responded that he supported Rafa Navar with any decision he made. So again, he was the guy behind the scenes. He was above Navar. And so, yeah, he washed his hands off the whole thing, but he was obviously in support of that. Chuck Rocha, who has now let out a book, a lovely book, where he has literally capitalized on the Bernie Sanders movement and Bernie Sanders' name. He has a book called Tio Bernie, and you see a little picture there with AOC, Bernie, and Chuck Rocha, as if Chuck Rocha got the Latino vote. And we're going to be talking about that because Chuck Rocha did anything but get the Latino vote. And he goes on to say, 4 months after the end of the Senator Sanders groundbreaking 2020 presidential campaign, senior advisor Chuck Rocha publishes his debut novel, quote, Tio Bernie, a chronicle of the historic Latino outreach program he pioneered. This book is not about me. It is about us, the Latinos who worked and volunteered for the campaign because they believe in an America that strives to live up to its potential. An America where every person, regardless of their immigration status, has health care and education and a roof over their head. An America where your zip code doesn't determine your potential. Pre-order today. Buy from Amazon. Buy for Barnes & Noble. First of all, if you were a real progressive, you wouldn't put your book on Amazon. Is pretty much taking praise and like credit for the Bernie Sanders Latino vote when they were the ones that led to many Latino voters being disenfranchised. Pasta and I covered it. The provisional ballots were given to mainly poor Latino people. They were 100% in poor areas, in ethnic areas. Latino people were the ones when we went to that room, because we went to that room, Chuck did it. There were all Latino names, all of the ones in the provisional ballots. What are provisional ballots? These ballots that are placebo ballots, as they're famously called. And they're not really counted right away. And most of the time, they're not even counted. And we went into that room, and the majority of them did not get counted because we were trying to warn the campaign about this, about the whole, hey, the machines aren't really good. The new laws don't, they're pretty much more of the same. They're not applying them correctly. The system database isn't updating. We were talking to people that were going to work the polls. They completely dismissed us. They completely just said, okay, no, whatever. We're not going to deal with this. You guys are wrong. And they called us conspiracy theorists, but here we are. And look who's praising, by the way, Chuck Rocha on this. This book is a true behind-the-scenes look at the Bernie 2020 Latino outreach operation and Chuck's unique story of redemption through his personal journey to Bernie. Jeff Weaver, Bernie 2020 senior advisor. Yeah, Jeff fucking Weaver, who is literally at the top of the mafioso gang that encompassed Chuck Rocha, Jeff Weaver, Rafa Navar, and the multitude of people that you guys can also see at the Bernie Autopsy website. And like, they are the reason Bernie Sanders lost, and they're trying to get credit for how far he got. No. The reason Bernie Sanders even got that far is because of the grassroots organizers and the volunteers who dedicated their time and effort for free, and also some of the employees, the field organizers who literally try to work with them in spite of really disliking them or hating them because they thought we need to get Bernie elected because they put so much on the line. It's just, like, it's just, we need to know who these people are so they are exposed so we don't continue trusting them. Another person that he lists here is Tony Cardenas, who is running against Angelica Dueñas, who is an actual progressive running in the San Fernando Valley. And Tony Cardenas takes defense money, he takes lobbyist money, he takes like big pharma money, he takes all this money, and he's over there, Rocha, thanking Tony Cardenas, which, by the way, that's how you know he's not a real deal progressive, because he wouldn't be thanking a neoliberal. And Rokana over here as well. I mean, it's disgusting. Like, what the fuck is the point, Rokana, of being a progressive and touting yourself as when you're going to go and support people like Chuck Rocha? And also, by the way, let me point out, I'm very disappointed in people like The Rising, who are seen as progressive media. They're mainstream. They're what the mainstream media should be, right? And they've gotten a lot of praise, and, almost to the point of like too much, like, okay, like, I get it. Like, this is what mainstream media should be, but this is how low we've come that we're like, okay, like, if anybody does their job, like, we praise them. Like, that's not how it should be. But they elevated people like Chuck Rocha to a point of like notoriety. I mean, there was a point where I was already talking against Chuck Rocha and letting people know, and I got so attacked, like, you don't know anything, Chuck Rocha has gotten the Latino vote. It's like, no. You're not going to tell me that, because it's just not true. Chuck Rocha did not get the Latino vote. Chuck Rocha actually undermined the Latino vote. Chuck Rocha is capitalizing and tokenizing the Latino ethnicity in order to go around and sing praises for himself. He was literally having Bernie barnstorms talking about his consulting company more than he was talking about Bernie Sanders. And that is a fact. I can back that up by countless people here, and I'm going to continue to do that. But the fact is, not enough people are able to see through a lot of these corrupt individuals. They know what they're doing. They know how to like talk the talk, and they are able to manipulate people. And so these people like the Chuck Rochas and the Rafa Navars were able to manipulate people, and they hurt a lot of the grassroots, and they vilified the grassroots as these jaded, crazy radicals, when literally without us, Bernie Sanders would have been an unknown senator still today. We took Bernie Sanders in 2015 from an unknown senator to the most popular senator in the United States. And that is not a small feat. And that was done by the grassroots. And Bernie Sanders made the mistake of surrounding himself with wolves in sheep's clothing and not having more people like Cornel West, like Nina Turner around, like people who saw through the bullshit. And he didn't. He just believed in what he was told. And like, there is a level of responsibility, but the reason I'm not harping on that is because it's the system that has led us to this point. We have a system full of corrupt individuals, and these individuals co-opt our movement, right? And Bernie is wrong to try to reform that. You can't reform a gang. Like, this is like legalized bribery, legalized crime, and it's okay because it's legalized, and they manipulate the law to get behind them. And so this is really sad, and it's unfortunate for Susie Shannon, like bringing it back to Susie Shannon, because the fact that she endured this in silence, wasn't able to really talk about it until now. But I will say that what happened to her is wrong. If it would have happened to anybody, it's wrong. But the fact that it happened under the Bernie Sanders campaign, there needs to be a response from Bernie. There also needs to be an awareness made as to who's behind this and who did this. This isn't NBC smearing Bernie. This happened. This is true. And unfortunately, I'm not going to fall into the bias of not criticizing the Bernie Sanders campaign from the left, because I'm doing it from the left. I'm not doing it from the right. I'm not trying to say Bernie Sanders is a socialist. No, Bernie Sanders is not a socialist. He's a FDR Democrat, like democratic socialist. He's not like a hardcore socialist. He was my compromise. So people telling me that I need to vote for Joe Biden, I mean, I'm sorry, he's my compromise. I'm not going to go any more than that, you know? And it's really sad that this is now, you know, this is what happened. And these people literally took Bernie's campaign down from the inside. And we've been talking about this, but the reason I'm still talking about it is because not enough people know that who these people are and what they did and how damaging it was to the campaign. And I just want to make sure you guys know. And so don't forget to look at the Bernie 2020 autopsy.wordpress.com, because that's where you're going to find all of the stuff that has been added to this hostile work environment. You could guys go see. A lot of people are going to tell me you're being divisive, Fiorella. Why? We have Nancy Pelosi, we have Trump, we have Biden, we have all these horrible neoliberals. But guess what, you guys? If we don't clean our own house, right, and we don't take control of our movement, somebody else will. And that's kind of what happened here. Bernie's mistake was not going back on the ground and listening to the grassroots. We tried. We sent a letter. We did all these things. None of it got to him. And they just told him what he wanted to hear. Like, I'm going to keep talking about this. You can call me divisive all you want, but I'm actually being honest and truthful. And that's something that some people can't handle because they want to pretend that everything is just, okay, well, Bernie is still my messiah. Bernie is not my messiah. He's a faulty human being. And I will always respect him because I don't believe he did this intentionally. I do believe that he is wrong. I believe he's a reformist. I'm not a reformist. I'm a revolutionary. And I'm here because of Bernie, but I'm also here because I am aware now and I have seen the truth and I have seen people like Bernie be manipulated, and he surrounded himself with the worst people. And that's something that I would have been afraid of. Had he become president, I was already like, man, Jeff Weaver, chief of staff, like, no, we don't want that. Like, in a way, maybe this needed to happen so we learned the freaking lesson. The problem is we're not learning our lessons. We need to know who these people are. We need to go deep and dive into it and figure out how they did this. And the more people speak out, the more we will know, and the more we won't make the same mistakes over and over again. Stop deifying people like Bernie Sanders, like AOC, like they can do no wrong. That's not the case. I could go on about AOC another day, but we cannot run campaigns that are progressive, grassroots, leftist campaigns the same way we run establishment campaigns. And that's what Bernie tried to do. And that is what destroyed it. Also, the system is so corrupt that they have all the control. So they put their people in. So we didn't have like a structure for a progressive campaign. It's all these things we could talk about. But at the end of the day, it is our job to really call this out and to continue talking about it and stand up for truth and justice. Because if we don't do it, nobody else will. We can't demand truth and justice from everybody else and not having within our own home. And that is the point of going through this. And I just want to say thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. And I hope you will continue on this journey of discovery with me, and subscribe, like, share to the Convo Couch. The more you help us out via Patreon, via Super Chat, we are getting suppressed continuously. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Convo out.